All right. So I was here. Applause. All right. So I was here 2 years ago. Thanks to the organizer for inviting me again. And today, my plan is not to talk too much about me or my company. You can Google that. You are digital natives. I would like to talk to you today about leadership, and especially leadership during very volatile times like you are experiencing now in Turkey and we are experiencing in many parts of the world. I will just introduce myself with one slide, myself in kilometers. I have worked in 13 countries, always with Colgate, 22 years, and I'm like more than 10,000 kilometers old. When we talk about leadership under volatile environment, what is clear is that change is difficult. Nobody likes change. Nobody likes to exit their comfort zone. But if you don't change, make sure that you are about to exit the market you're in or the career you're in. You must be adaptable. Let's start with just leadership principles that apply even if you are in Switzerland. So even in stable times, these things always work. It starts all with a strategy. So point to a clear direction. And it's very important that the strategy must be clear and consistent. Why? Because if people don't understand it, they're not following the strategy. They're just going on their own. So it's very important as a leader to set key objectives and a vision. If there is a vision, people will be inspired by it and will eventually follow it. A strategy has to be clear, it has to be easy to understand, and therefore it will create alignment. And because it takes a long, long time to build a strategy which makes sense, which is understood, then it has to be consistent. A strategy must stick for 3-5 years. That's why normally we do strategic plans. The last, I've been in Turkey 3 years. When I came, I did the strategy, and I've not changed it for 3 years. Everyone in my company know what we have to do. And focus. Focus on what matters, makes the difference. The tricky part is not so easy to understand what matters. But once you do, you must spend the bulk of your time, the bulk of your money, the bulk of your people time against that, and only that, and try to kill everything else. Stop or minimize it. Napoleon. Execution. Some may think, an old school thing like that a big leader talks about empty concepts, vague direction, with very complicated words, so that will make him or her look very intelligent. But actually, the real leader needs to roll up the sleeves and do some of the dirty work. How can you give people guidance if you don't know the details of what they're talking about? So you must know your business in details. That will also communicate to the organization that you care. You must align the triangle of goals, resources, and the strategy. If these three vertices are not aligned, the design will not complete and something will fail on the way. Be involved and don't be like Steve Jobs, who had a great visionary attitude, but he totally failed to check reality. He had a distorted field of reality. Always make sure that you are going on the right direction and do checks on the way. Gandhi, if you recognize him, set the example. So lead by doing, because in your company there will be hundreds of pair of eyes looking at you. If there is volatility, if the Turkish lira collapses 3% on one day, they look at me, and if I panic, they panic. If I'm cool, they're cool. And because of that, you must live the values you want to transmit. If you want to create an entrepreneurial company, you must act entrepreneurially. As I said before, in difficult times especially, display confidence. Ventilate your frustration inside. And as part of the reality check, you must check on yourself. Ask your team member, how are you doing? Do you know this team? It's my football team, Napoli. Okay? Build strong teams, including Napoli, so make sure that you have the right people in the right jobs. These apply not only when you become CEO, because I'm sure many of you will have the chance. You are a leader in every situation. You are a leader now, maybe in a school project. The organizers here have been leading a very complex project for 6 months, they told me. So make sure that you put the right person in the right job. And if that person is not right, make her or make him right. So they need some coaching in some areas, they need some feedback, but fix. And if you want to innovate, you must create a safe environment. People need to feel comfortable to make mistakes. Otherwise, if you beat them up after a mistake, they will never come out of their comfort zone again. You must reward performance and have fun. Communication is the other enabler for effective leadership, and it has to be two ways. They say listen as much as you talk, so for two-way communication. So these are general principles. You might have already heard them many times, but how these principles change when the world changes, when you go in a world of chaos. So to introduce you, there is a great book that you should try to read. It's called Made to Stick, and it's about how to communicate to a large audience complex concepts so that they stick with you. To tell you this story, a fairy tale is the best vehicle to make you understand this concept. Two robots. These are not fictional characters. This is a real story. You can Google it. Dave Lavery is a pretty cool job, head of NASA planet explorations. I mean, I would love to have this type of career. I'm just a GM. So Dave Lavery, beside a very questionable taste for t-shirts, he heads NASA. One day he said, let's explore Mars. Why not? He went to Pasadena, California, to JPL, this is Jet Propulsion Laboratory. If you watch the movie The Martian, this is the guys that built the missile for NASA. And he gave them the job. He said, please build me a machine that can go on Mars and explore Mars and pick up objects and bring samples back to Earth. Roger that. But after 4 years and $5 billion, so 15 billion Turkish lira, actually 20, they created a prototype that weighed 1 ton. Meet Robbie. So Robbie, if the clicker works, he had these high-resolution cameras. Yes, I mean, I understand that this was the 80s, so technology at the time. He had a supercomputer, which had 8 megabyte RAM. Today, not even the clock on your smartphone has that so little memory. These super-duper tires, they can go on Mars, 1 meter wide. And the way Robbie worked, he would advance 10 centimeters. The camera will scan all the territory under his feet, check for material, temperature, consistency, and then this arm will eventually go down and test the material, and based on the computer interaction, decided to pick it up and throw it in the back. Okay? And then 10 more centimeters to scan again everything possible. And then comes Colin. Colin was a summer intern at JPL, and he said, hello, can I help? I have a great idea. Kid, go to school. What do you know about computer? We are JPL. So, okay, Colin is very upset. He goes to Radio Shack. With $500 versus the $5 billion, he buys a lot of spare parts, and he builds a small robot that he calls Tooth. Nothing to do with Colgate. And he goes back, and he says, let's fight. I challenge Robbie. Who can pick more samples in a given time? Robbie picked 12, and Tooth, 256. People stopped laughing. Tooth won. And so, the big question, how can a $500 computer beat a $5 billion? Focus. Tooth had a simple command. The command was, Tooth, move forward until you bump into something. When you bump, try to pick it up. If you can't, it's too heavy, drop and go in another direction. So Tooth won, and Tooth became the model that eventually NASA used to develop their Mars rover that in 1997 landed on Mars and saved NASA lots and lots of billions. Colin was offered a job. He said, no thanks. He decided to found a company called iRobot that today is worth $500 million. Still 1/10 of the cost of Robbie. So you may ask, who cares about robots? You should care because this story tells you that in some situations we may move very slowly, afraid to make decisions, and analyze every possible data point. But during uncertainty, speed is key because the first mover gets it all. And so you must experiment. You need to go fast and do trial and error. Tooth goes forward, trial. If it's too heavy, it's an error. Move on. But if it's not too heavy, he will pick it up. Leader, as I mentioned before, must bridge strategy and reality. I don't name the company. You pick whatever you want, so I don't get sued, but theory versus reality. Of course, in an uncertain world, it's not easy because the reality keeps changing, volatility. So what can you do? First of all, the leader has to be agile. The ability to lead in many circumstances when the situation is new or ambiguous. And if you don't like change, you will like irrelevance even less, said the General Shinesky. You may don't know who he is, neither do I. But the good news is that nobody really knows what's going on. Think about the stockbrokers. It's actually pure gambling. Nobody really knows what's happening. I remember I had the chief economist of a major bank that worked with us when I came to Turkey 3 years ago, and he said, yeah, the Turkish lira may, depending on the election, it can go to 250 or 260, and eventually it went to 4. So nobody can really tell you what's going to happen in the future. There are too many variables at stake. So what you can do, you can light many fires. I mean, don't burn the university, but experiment. You know, the idea of lighting a fire, you light a small fire. If you pick up, you put more wood. If it doesn't burn, you change the spot. So you experiment something, you try on a small scale. If it works, you do it bigger scale. If it doesn't, you didn't lose too much time or too much resources. And a good example is the movie industry. They do that. Sometimes, especially for TV series, they shoot a pilot. If it works, they do a full series. If it doesn't, they change the topic. Some smart movie executive, actually, when you sign a contract for a movie, they make you sign the contract for an eventual sequel, because then they will save the money. And if it works, they're going to shoot multiple episodes in one go to reduce the production cost. We are a result of trial and error, the evolution. The weak races, they go extinct. Think of the dodo, this very weird bird who disappeared centuries ago. Another strong, like bacteria, actually they survive for billions of years. But very important, any action is less risky than doing nothing. My personal philosophy, I'd rather make 10 decisions and be right 7. Hopefully the 3 I'm wrong will not cost my company too much. Then make only 3 decisions and be right 3. Because the 7 decisions I didn't make actually are mistakes. You must take decisions. And then you must create a culture of effective sharing. So you make the fire, it works, you burn the forest, and then tell the others, hey guys, that worked. Maybe they can replicate in their country, in their different line of business, in their different business function. It's very important also, I said, the strategy must be consistent over time, but you need to be agile in the execution and adjust. So you always keep some reserve money, reserve time for the next challenge or for the unexpected.